love remote working. This obsession started about 10 years ago when I was living in California, and I belonged to a social group that was interested in the future, technology, and staying healthy. We would meet up by going hiking together every week, and there was this one guy in the group who was particularly interesting to me because he was trying to solve a strange problem. He didn't want to die. Now, there are a lot of people out there who are working on ways to live forever. Some practice calorie restriction, which is eating a very small amount of food. Some research cryonics, which is freezing the body to be brought back to life later. And as weird as some of this might sound, the problem for my friend was that none of these people were talking to each other and sharing the results of their experiments. So he decided he was going to build an online project management tool so that these people could share data, collaborate, and solve this pesky problem of not dying. Now, in 2006, these tools were not so common like they are today. So when he asked me to join his company, I didn't hesitate. I loved the team, I loved the vision, and for me, it was a dream job. Now, 3 years later, and this tool changed my life. I was working at home when I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the saxophone player for my all-time favorite band, the legendary Pink Dots. Now, I'd met the band years earlier and told them that they should call me if they ever needed anything, but I never expected them to actually call. It turns out they needed someone to go on tour with them to help sell CDs and merchandise. I tried to act all cool and calm as I explained that I was going to have to talk to my boss and arrange a few things, but inside I was totally jumping up and down and screaming, woo-hoo! So the next day, I sheepishly went into the office and approached my boss, and I told him about my dilemma. On the one hand, I didn't want to lose my dream job. I really loved it. And on the other hand, there was no way that I was not going to go on tour with my favorite band. Luckily for me, he said, I built this tool so that we can work from anywhere. So here's a mobile router. Have a great time and make sure to get your work done. So, during the day, while we were driving long distances to get to the next venue, I used the mobile router to log in and work with my team online. And at night, I sold CDs and t-shirts, and I met all the fellow fans, and I had one of the best times of my whole life. And it was a total aha experience, that I could work from anywhere, even a van. For ages, people have been working 9 to 5. But mobile devices, centralized data, and all kinds of apps and software are making it easier for us to connect with each other no matter where we are. Now, not everybody is using the opportunity to run off with their favorite bands or travel to exotic locations. It turns out most people just want a little flexibility in their schedule. In fact, most people prefer to work a hybrid schedule of some days at the office with colleagues and some days alone. And the reason? Productivity. I think it's funny because a lot of managers won't allow remote working because they're afraid that the work won't get done. But one of the top reasons that people request flexibility is in order to be more productive. Remote workers aren't trying to escape doing work. We're trying to escape the day prison. We want to use technology to make better use of our time so that we can spend more time doing things that we love and less time stuck in traffic. But it's not just about freedom for the employees. Companies have a lot to gain as well. For centuries, companies have been hiring the most qualified worker that just happened to be in a particular location. This doesn't mean that the teams are populated by the best and the brightest, just the folks that are nearby or willing to relocate. Now, not only can companies get the best and the brightest, they can also get people at a lower cost. A software developer in San Francisco costs significantly more than a developer in Vietnam, and that is revenue companies can't ignore. More than that, though, flexibility allows companies to keep their existing employees. In a recent survey just this year, 60% of the people said that they were quitting, or they had quit, or they were going to quit their jobs that didn't offer flexibility. One of my friends has to hire someone to take his daughter to school in the morning because the office where he works requires that he's there before school starts, even though there's no particular reason that he needs to be there. So you can imagine the loyalty that he feels for that company. For the last 3 years, I've been interviewing people on my podcast about how to bridge distance globally. Everyone from software developers to HR directors, managers, neuroscientists, even a few folks at NASA. I've been collecting their best practices and tips for how to make remote working not just workable, but undeniably productive. And I want to share a couple of the tips with you today, as well as show off some of my favorite tools that I found along the way. Now, to start with, and this is going to sound very basic, but it's kind of an issue, everyone on a remote team needs to have a rockin' fast internet connection. We think we want to be in the same room with people, but what we really want is fast communication, just like talking to the person next to you. And we can only have that when we have a solid, stable, reliable internet connection. If we want to improve the conversation even more, we put on a headset and minimize the background noise. The barking dog and the coffee shop sounds, they're cute at first, but they quickly get in the way of a productive conversation. When we work together at the office, we know what each other are doing because, well, we can see and we hear each other. But remote teams, the way that we know what each other are doing is by working out loud. This is the online version of working in an office. Instead of walking by people's cubicles and seeing what they're working on, remote teams use tools to show each other what we're doing. Most teams have some sort of a group instant message system so that they can talk to each other all day. But one of the simplest and most powerful tools that remote teams have at their disposal is the webcam. Now, I know, a lot of people are cringing, I can see it. We don't like turning the video cameras on. But the sense of team and the camaraderie that we get when we see each other is way too powerful to ignore. One of the teams at Spotify uses a Google Hangout to work together. They're a remote team, and when their time zones overlap, they turn the video on with the sound off. So this simulates what it's like to be in the same room together. And when somebody has a question or wants to say something, they just unmute themselves. Now, my remote colleague Gretchen and I, we do exactly the opposite. We have the video off because it's too distracting, but we have the sound on so we can hear each other. And this simulates what it's like to sit side by side. And then there's some wacky teams like the Happy Melly team who use their webcams to have virtual dance parties. So lots of things are possible. Then there are virtual offices. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an office that you go to online. When you log in, you see a floor plan with a bunch of rooms and the avatars of your fellow logged-in colleagues. You can move yourself from room to room just by double-clicking on a room, but you can only see and hear the people that are in the same room with you, just like at the office. Being able to see where everybody is on this virtual floor plan gives us a real sense of togetherness, and it makes our remote team more accessible. So instead of scheduling a time to talk to somebody, we just knock on their virtual door. And if you thought virtual offices were far out, let me introduce you to Telepresence. This simple device allows me to beam in, just like on Skype, except I can move myself from side to side, or I can nod my head up and down. Now, this may not seem like very much, but this movement has a very powerful effect. For the person beaming in, if I'm in an in-person meeting, I can move myself to see who's talking, or maybe I just want to look at the whiteboard. And for the people who are in the flesh, this movement actually humanizes the person and gives them a sense of presence in the room. And of course, it opens up a whole new form of office humor. Now, Other telepresence robots are bigger and drivable. So you can beam into what is basically a tablet on wheels and drive yourself around using the arrow keys on your keyboard. Half of the people at the Suitable Technologies office actually beam into work every day. And if you were wondering what it's like to say hi to somebody in a robot, we can't shake hands, of course. What we do instead is much more 2D. We fist bump. So it's clear that the technology has opened up all kinds of new opportunities for work-life freedom. And what's so particularly exciting for me is that now, more than ever, we can work on the things that we like the most while living the lifestyles that we want. I mean, I got to go on tour with my favorite band while keeping my day job. And my colleague Sam, she's pursuing her dream of becoming a war journalist in South Sudan while doing marketing for a remote company. I want this opportunity and this freedom for everyone. Many governments have put permits and visas in place in order to restrict where people can do their work. But in the age of borderless technology, these restrictions are quickly becoming outdated. And I'll end with an example from one of my favorite interviews, and that was with the Hyperloop team. In 2015, SpaceX announced a competition for the Hyperloop Pod. So they wanted someone to design a Hyperloop pod. Now the Hyperloop is a super fast transportation system that can take a 7-hour commute and squeeze it into 30 minutes. Someone on the online platform Reddit posted online that he wanted to join this competition and asked if there was anybody else who was interested. 1 year later, with a team of over 400 remote volunteers from all over the world, most of whom who had never met each other, they came in finalists in the competition. So you can see that we no longer need to ask for permission in order to solve important problems. We can take solutions into our own hands from everywhere. So maybe you just want a little flexibility in your schedule so you can avoid the commute or train for a triathlon or walk your kids to school in the morning. And maybe your company needs to expand because you can't find the people locally. And maybe you want to design a Hyperloop pod or end aging. With the current technology, it is absolutely possible to work online as if we're in the office together. And it's up to us to optimize the technology and learn these new ways of working. I want everybody to be able to work on the things that they love the most. And I want companies to be able to hire people who love what they do versus people who are just doing their jobs. Because I think that it's this kind of collaboration that gives us superpowers. Thank you.